If you give everyone the right to vote, well, then you should educate them to the level where they can use that vote in a somewhat meaningful way, right?
It just doesn't make sense if you look at the normal distribution of intelligence in society, right? It's always a normal distribution. So how can it ever make sense that you group the top 50% together?
No matter how objective you think your education is,
Yeah.
there's an ideology pushing it. And that's just the truth of nature.
A real science should be beyond morality.
If you disagree as a parent, well, too bad. Your kid is going to go through 13 years of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
indoctrination. It's just naive and kind of egotistical to think that some hyper modern, completely new idea
Yeah.
is like better, you know?
If you're obedient and kind of smart, you will do amazingly. If you
Yeah.
are extremely smart but not at all obedient, you will be kicked out of the system.
Yeah.
But it becomes like a people factory.
It is a people factory. The bell goes, you do this. The bell goes, you do this.
Oh, we have 5 minutes to get
And
to
you
the next
line up,
class,
you
and
move
everyone
to
goes.
the,
And that,
yeah. You move the same patterns, right? In
and then
the
next year,
lockers and
boom, same schedule, same teachers teaching the same, teaching exactly the same things.
Welcome back to episode 5 of Above the Horizon. I'm excited to have made it so far to the 5th episode, so let's keep it going. Today we will be talking about education, and as always, I'm Halver, and this is Jasper. And yeah, we thought we wanted to explore, kind of continuing on last episode, where we talked about government, and now going to another big aspect that is closely related, I would say, in some ways, which is education. We want to talk about maybe the philosophical underpinnings of education, what it is, what it means, and also make sure to touch on some of the pros, cons, issues that we see with modern education and how the systems work. And Jasper, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I mean, 5th episode already. It's going so fast. It's starting to really feel like a regular, but that's really nice. And yeah, again, really interesting topic. Fits in with the last episode, like you said, with government, because it's it's really one of the essential aspects of government and of society. And it shapes so much of society. So much of society is the systems of how we educate the young people. And I mean, therefore, it's a mega important topic to think about and to look at how does education form our society? What are the things that should be there? What are the things we should do differently, etc. And
yeah, I think, like you said, it's very important to be aware of this aspect, right? It's another one of those big concepts, and it's important to be aware of how it impacts society, how it impacts us, and what we can do to control it, right? What we can do to change it to the better.
Yeah.
So I think we want to start with just kind of describing, okay, what do we mean by education, right?
Mm-hmm.
What types of education exist, Jasper?
Yeah, I mean, I think in society you see the classical forms of education that I guess everyone knows. It's from primary school, high school, university, all of this. I mean, it starts in kindergarten for a lot of people. I mean, this is like the primary way I would see it. And then you have big other aspects that are not so often thought about, which is the how parents teach their children, how they act in friend groups, how and even media influences them, right? Nowadays, people are online a lot on social media. There's so much education for our kids that are growing up, and it all fits together into one big system. And I think for us, it's the whole system that is important here. How do all the pieces fit together? And then the educational system of the state is one aspect of the bigger system.
Yeah, I think it's very important to be mindful of the fact that there are many forms of education, right? I think when people hear the word education, they think school automatically, which is fine, right? It's the big systemized way of educating people. But like you say, we're educated in many ways by many different people, different groups, different systems. And when we're talking about this, big topic, right? If we're touching on certain elements of education, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's only within school that we're referring to this topic, right? we can also talk about it in the bigger sense. So that...
Yeah, for sure. And then there's also a lot of the other things, like what is actually taught in schools, because I think the clear answer, right, it's like math, learning to read. In primary school, it's also learning how to behave with the children around you, how to have a normal conversation, how to have a discussion, right? How not to feel overwhelmed when someone criticizes you, but how to be able to handle that constructively. Like there's so many things that are taught in schools or should be taught in schools. I don't know if you would like to expand on that, because I think there are many more aspects here that fit in.
Yeah, for sure there are many aspects. I think there is like the knowledge aspect and the character aspect, right? Where knowledge, as we know, right? You learn how to do math, you learn how to read, you learn about history, sociology, religion, whatever other topics, right? You learn things, whether it's facts or theories or ideas, and you also learn kind of practical mental skills, if you want to call them that, right? Reading is not, well, you can argue maybe differently how you want, but reading is not just knowledge, right? It's a mental skill. Or understanding complex math, right? It's a logical skill to a certain degree. So you definitely have like the mental faculties training, and then you have, like you said, with the character, right? Learning how to deal with other people, learning how to communicate, organize, socialize, right? These are also aspects of education. Maybe crucially in your early years, but I think it continues on, right? Always.
Yeah, for sure. I think another big thing is it's also about the society, right? And teaching someone about society, about how society works, about the history of society, some of the myths and the stories that our parents lived by, you know, and what are these fundamental aspects that make society work together, and about teaching that. And I think this is more, you know, you could say this is more the responsibility of the parent, right? Because in modern society, we have very much a split, right, of the educational system that is more aimed at just teaching, you know, like the skills that you said, like the mathematical skills, the reading skills, but they're less focused on these other aspects.
Yeah. I mean, we both kind of know, right, that the main goal is to make functioning citizens, or what you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of the key thing right now with education systems, and it differs, right, between the different forms of school. Like, what aspects are you supposed to learn at each stage, and what is outsourced to parents, etc., right? But I think the main thing is to be aware that education takes place in many different domains, right? It takes place through the main school system. Okay, and we can talk further about what is covered in the main school system. It takes place through, you know, your friendships and what you do as groups, right? It takes place through sports teams or other organizations, right? Your free time hobbies. And it takes place in this kind of global scale as well, right? With media and the kind of information you consume, right? You're being educated in some way, whether it's structured or not is not necessarily the only factor that matters, right? It can be unstructured learning.
For sure. And in the end, this is what shapes society, right? It's the things you teach the young people that ends up forming the next generation, and it's always dependent on the education. If you want to change society, you have to change education, because it all flows through there. Without like these bigger systems of education, you will never be able to change something fundamental in society in the way you envision.
And that's where it gets into, like, what's the goal of education, right? What is the essence of education? Why does it exist? What's the point of it? And I think I could just state one thing right first, which is this idea that why do we educate people? Well, because we want people to be like functioning members of society, right? That's like a very broad thing, right? But if we look at history as well, you know, why were people educated? You know, it's to become the best character, or the one who has the most knowledge required to achieve things. Or
I think here it's good to make a distinction between different possible purposes of education, because one might say, well, if you just want, you know, you need electricians in society, you need people who build the streets, you need teachers, you need a lot of these different aspects that mostly it's just about schooling someone for that job. And this is an economical necessity. There's no real way around it in our modern society that we need this. You have the character building, right, that we talked about teaching them the morals of society, how to behave, all of these things. And then I think separate from this, you have the universities where, or university where people really learn to think. And I think this should be in all forms of education. But, you know, there's like a certain group of people who are able to think about new things and really, what we call, I mean, research, right? Research, development, these things.
Yeah. I think to touch on that, there's like this sense that you need to build how do you say, a baseline citizen in everyone, right?
Yes.
So you have this baseline citizen, which is the person who is, you know, you're capable of social interactions, you're capable of reading at a sufficient level, you're capable of talking about what is going on in maybe just your local society or bigger society to a certain degree, right? You have some baseline knowledge, so you're a functioning citizen, right? And then I feel like on top of that, you have what you mentioned, right? Everyone needs to be a baseline citizen, but then, okay, we need certain jobs in society, so we will always have to train a certain amount of people to become those people, right? You don't have to think. We just want you to become someone who can do this job, right? Maybe you can think and you can do it in a better way or smarter way or whatever, but
for sure. I think it's always good to teach people to think and to really think for themselves, but it's not a necessity that 100% of the people in society do that, right? It's optional kind of.
I think, and I think here's another interesting thing, which is that if you think about a baseline citizen, right, it doesn't just function in society. It actually, in a democratic society, it has the right to vote, right? So in theory, at least, we can argue for whether in practice. I mean, look at the last episode for
We're
more
gonna do
info
another
on that.
episode on democracy.
Yeah, exactly.
But it plays together very, very much, like you were saying. Like, you cannot have a functioning democracy if the people are not educated about what they're voting on, right? I think this is that.
Exactly. And if you give everyone the right to vote, well, then you should also teach everyone enough. You should educate them to the level where they can use that vote in a somewhat meaningful way, right? At least in principle, that should be an idea. And so I think, yes, you know, you have this baseline citizen, but that also comes with a lot of power. And so what you said about teaching people to think, right? That is technically something a baseline citizen should also have. Because if you can't really think freely, if you can't really think and ideate on your own things, then do you really have the, you know, power to vote or something like that, right?
But there you get into a really hard thing, right? Is will you ever have a society where all the people are able to think about these big topics, you know? That's
probably not.
I mean, it seems to be kind of
a democracy discussion, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Or it's like, right, then you go into other aspects of society. If you look at education and you see it's not possible to have all the other, or it's not possible to educate everyone to the same level, then that has implications on other aspects of society and how you have to do that.
Exactly. Education has many, you know, what would you call them, like output variables, you know? I mean, we talk about this is what you teach, you know, let's say become a baseline citizen, but that has many impacts in society, right? What goes into the people. Because in essence, if we take as the government who defines the education system, it is, you know, controlling people into becoming what you desire, right? To a certain degree. I mean, a certain share of teaching is just, we want you as a 5-year-old to become mostly this kind of person. And that's what we're going to teach you.
And I think that's only the natural thing. Like that's in any society. Like you imagine a future, right? And then you're like, I would like society to look like this, therefore I want to teach these values, these principles, these skills, these things to the people. And
Yeah.
I think you have
And
to
with
think
that,
about it in that way. If you don't think about it in that way, if you only think about it as in everyone should be free to explore whatever kind of thing they want, in the long term, that just falls apart. You cannot work like
exactly.
that. You have to set some goals, make decisions.
Yeah. It's only natural, right, for a society that you want. I mean, you need people who are somewhat uniform, right? Somewhat conforming to the same ideas, somewhat within the same culture, somewhat accepting the maybe necessity of different domains of society, right? Whether that is, you know, the need for doctors and nurses or electricians or plumbers or teachers, right? Everyone has to kind of accept on a what's the word? Not like individualistic scale, but on
like a societal scale that, you know,
yeah,
it's, or like that
you're part of a community and you need to realize the need for those different domains in our community.
And I think people also find a lot of purpose in this, you know, because you're making up a part of society that is essential, you know. Without the job that you're doing, society would fall apart. And the people who are doing the university degrees, right, who are really studying, right, like if I imagine a good university, right, with students, they are motivated. There's no one there who is kind of like, yeah, I'm not that interested in the subject, but I'm just kind of trying to pass my grades and stuff. Like that doesn't belong at a university. It just doesn't. Like if you're not making the full hours 100% interest in what you're doing, then you should go somewhere else, because the university should be, it's the privilege that the whole society built for you, right? All these electricians, all these the nurses, the teachers built society such that you are able to chase these theoretical ideals, and you should be privileged for that.
It's like you know, managing the operational aspects versus innovating on new things to include, right? The vast chunk of society do work that is necessary for managing our operations, right? And then you have these privileged researchers who can spend tax money trying to come up with new ideas for how to make a better society. And then, well, you better make yourself deserved for that, right? You better make yourself worthy of that.
And this is something that annoys me in, you know, the university that I was in. And I must say, I also wasn't that motivated. Like I wasn't extremely motivated to pursue computer science, right, which is what I studied. I was kind of motivated, but it wasn't like my purpose in life. But you saw so many people who are just like, they're just there. And then it's like, what has university become then? Like, has it just become this place where people just kind of exist? And it's almost like it's parasitical on society, you know, where...
Yeah, I feel like university has become just an extension of high school or like main schooling, right?
Yeah.
Where we used to think that, okay, we give you 12, 13 years of base schooling, which is highly structured, limited choice. It makes you a functioning adult, right? And then we're going to use the university to really, I think, in theory, it was probably a good idea. It was a natural evolution that first, you know, only the people who really innovated went to university. And then they realized, well, actually, if you want to be like a functioning engineer nowadays, you need a lot more specialized teaching after high school, which then became kind of merged with university. And I feel like they didn't really do the split that they should have done, right?
Should have probably, but as society grows more complex, you need more education, right? Let's say until 18, it's not enough years. You need another 4 years of education, you know, or you need, that's fine, right? We can do that. We live longer. We have so, and if your productivity goes up, it can definitely be a good thing. But then you need to create something above it or something in between, you know, where it's just...
you need to create something, something parallel, right? And I think technically they have some splits like this in different countries, but they're not as distinct as what I would like it to be, because I still feel that university should remain, you know, this creative, dedicated domain, right?
Yeah.
Where...
And I think it should never be the case that 50% of a society goes to university. That just doesn't make sense. Then there should be something above that.
Yeah.
Then, you know,
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense if you look at the normal distribution of intelligence in society, right? It's always a normal distribution. So how can it ever make sense that you group the top 50% together in any kind of a statistical analysis? That doesn't make sense.
No.
Which is what's happening.
And when all of the members of those groups have the same kind of rights to, you know, publishing papers, performing research, spending tax money on theories, then you probably get a lot of bullshit or unnecessary research as well, right? Which muddles the waters about what is actually valuable, what are the greatest thinkers actually caring about, focusing on, right? So it makes things it muddles it, you know. I mean, I'm sorry if you're, you know, kind of a 40% performer, then maybe you shouldn't be among the people innovating on the greatest ideas for humanity moving forward. You know, I'm sorry, but that might just be reality.
I
you know, maybe you should have a job instead.
It's the only thing that makes sense, and it doesn't mean either that people of you know, like the who don't go to university aren't thinking or cannot come up with new things, but there needs to be a place in society where the greatest minds are able to discuss openly, freely with other people who are very similarly dedicated to the topic, you know, who their lives are based around knowledge. That's like their purpose in life, right? That's what they want, and they don't care about anything else. And you have to create a place for that.
For sure. And I think there's many topics to touch on with that, right? It's like, okay, how does equality fit into that, right? With the idea that everyone should be welcomed if they pass certain criteria. How do standardized tests fit into that, right? Where, as long as you pass the requirements, you're good, right? There's nothing else. And those requirements are purely maybe memorization based or something like that. Or like everyone can get a PhD, whatever, you know, just pick a topic and you'll get one, something like this.
Yeah, that's what it is nowadays. Like anyone can get a PhD. It's like everyone knows, like, oh, there are some professors where you might really have to put in some work, but for most of the professors, you just go through and you will get your PhD. Doesn't matter if you know, the only thing you need is a decent work ethic, and that's it.
But I think you know, there's a lot of influence of ideology into why this is the case. But if we also look at it, we have this tough aspect of modern society, which is that it is becoming way more complex, right? There is just more information you should have in your head to be on top of society, right? To be on top of functioning in society, because it is complex. And so as a result, you can argue, well, as society grows more complex, so the base schooling time or amount has to increase. And if we're already at max capacity, it means more years of base schooling, right? Now, I think there is an argument to be made that maybe instead of more base schooling, right? Let's say, okay, the argument would be we're going to do 16 years of base schooling instead, right? Maybe many people would feel, well, that's too much just because, you know, you're an adult at 18, something like that, right? You're done with puberty, whatever, you want to go live life somewhere else. If it was enforced until the age of 23, that would be maybe too much. So maybe an alternative then would be to rework how the education system works for the first 13 years, right? You know, do you think every person has to touch on calculus? I mean, I like math, but do you think every person in society has to reach a point in their base schooling where they touch on calculus? I would argue they probably don't need that.
I think if you're allowed to vote, you should.
It's going to be the new test. Do these calculus exercises.
For example, you should have a good intuitive grasp of statistics, of how statistical biases come into play, all of these things. Otherwise, you will never be able to make a good decision on bigger topics.
Sure. But okay, maybe then the mistake is in the way we are taught, as the example, maths, right? Why does it take so many years to get the calculus, right? I'm sure there are more efficient ways to teach that. And I'm also sure that, okay, you argue about the voting, right? But if you're pro that not everyone
then you don't
gets
have
the
this
vote,
problem anymore, right?
Exactly, then it makes it easier.
Yeah.
Because I think the main issue is that, probably a big percent of the population shouldn't have to touch calculus, to be honest. You can still be a functioning citizen. I don't use calculus in my day-to-day life, but you need a certain, like you say, grasp of statistics, of numbers, of the logic.
Yeah. I think it's good always to promote education in all levels of society, if you can promote it, because I think it does allow society to go to higher levels, to grow beyond what it would normally be capable of. However, I would also agree definitely that it's unnecessary for all people to to have calculus or to be able to read Latin, or I don't know. And I think a lot of people also just want to live their lives. They're not really that interested in, and that's
and that's fine. And what I wanted to mention this as well, because I thought that by the time you get to like high school, you start thinking about, okay, which of the things I'm learning right now am I actually gonna need in my life?
Yeah, true. Yeah.
and right. At that point, it's like you're in math class and you're like,
I don't care.
I will never.
Yeah.
Well, not me, but someone who is not gonna go down a technical path will be like, well, I will never need this math, so why do I care, right?
I think
and that's understandable.
Yeah, I think this touches on another really interesting aspect, which is that a lot of learning, it's really memorization, and especially with math, for example, I feel like most people who get out of high school don't have an intuition for the math that's going on.
No.
They just know the rules. They know how to rewrite things. They learn like this rule. If you have a divisor, then you can invert it and switch it around and they just move the symbols around, but they don't intuit what's going on.
No, I agree. They learn the rules of the language, right? Like, oh, you can move this there. You can cancel above and below, right? That's what you can do. But they don't understand what it means, what it actually means.
Yeah.
And that's because also school doesn't really teach the meaning of what we learn, I feel.
And I think it
teaches you how to do the exercises.
Yes. It teaches you how to memorize, how to pass the tests, right? That's in the end the goal. Yeah. And I think with math, I think this is the case. Another example is with history, right? It's a lot about just in which year was the emperor assassinated, give me the list of people who are the most important during this era, or I don't know. And it's like, for me, that's not learning about history. Learning about history for me is about learning about the fundamental forces. What did people believe in? Really getting an intuitive understanding about a culture, what they believed in, what they stood for, why they allied with someone else,
and trying to get a grasp of like humanity's evolution, right? That either humans over time is what history is about, and trying to understand that, intuit that.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter about the year that World War I was fought in, if it was 1914 or 15 or 12, you know, like that's not important for your understanding of history. And then with language, it's the same thing, we're not learning to talk, to speak, so many people officially have like B1, B2 Spanish, I don't know, but they get out of high school and they cannot speak a word if they get into the culture, right? And it's like, what went wrong in education that this is possible?
This always frustrated me about learning the third language, after English and the main language. Then it's always like, we're going to spend 3 years studying essentially the same grammar, and you're not going to know anything about how to speak, but you're going to be very good at conjugating a couple of verbs.
Yes, and you know a lot of words, but for a lot of them you have to think like 3 seconds before you can translate them.
Yeah.
And you cannot form sentences naturally with it at all, right?
No.
You're not able to, in the moment, adapt, say something. You don't learn that.
Yeah. It's like formalized. I don't know how to describe this, but it's the same as with math, right? Where you learn kind of the rules of the language itself, but you don't learn how to use it, what it means, how it actually functions. You don't get an intuitive
You just
understanding
learn
of
like
it,
this,
right?
the syntax, the
Yeah, exactly. The
yeah,
syntax.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
and then, but that seems to be a general call
theme,
it problem or
yeah,
like theme, yeah, across teaching. With history, it's the same thing, right? You're learning
yeah,
these, uh, you're learning the very measurable, very concrete facts or quote unquote facts from time to time, and that's kind of like how you build everything. You know, it's these data points, these concrete points.
yeah.
When in actuality, real learning would be to develop this intuitive understanding, right? Would be
I
to
agree.
develop this feeling
Yeah,
for what it means, you know,
yeah,
and how does that impact your mind in the way you view reality,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's what it builds up.
Yes, I think what's also really interesting related to this is how I think a lot of people can learn the rules and can do this kind of basic learning of this is the step, this was the year, these are the things. But an intuitive understanding actually requires a deep motivation. You know, it requires, I think,
Yeah.
someone to be truly motivated to understand. Um, and
Yeah, it does require motivation, seems to be one factor, right? And you know, you can't keep everyone interested and motivated for all the baseline citizen
yeah,
teachings. That's fair, right? That's not reality. And
yeah,
so there's this clash between
yeah,
nature and what is necessary for society in that sense, right? Um, but
yeah.
it's interesting because if you think about children, they learn intuitively, right? Like children are pure intuition. I mean,
I
they
mean, when
don't
they learn a
know any
language,
rules.
they
Yeah,
learn
they
a
don't
language
know any
intuitively.
specific. Exactly, it's all intuition,
Yeah,
and then we seem to lose that. Maybe
yeah,
it's a factor, it's a side
yeah,
effect of building up a lot of like repository of details
yeah,
and things that are true, right? And
yeah. I think like if you look at the schooling, right, if it's hard to get everyone interested in the subject because a lot of people are just inherently not interested, right? Or they're like
yeah,
this history, this long history, ah, I mean it's okay, but I'm not really interested. Then you automatically get into this, okay, well, how are we going to make sure they're all focused, right? How are we going to make sure we
yeah,
standardize this? That, and then you get into these measurements, right? What can we measure? How can we test people in a standardized manner? And
yeah,
then, well, what do you arrive at? What are you going to test for history? Are you going to test what kind of an intuitive understanding someone has about the Roman Empire and how people lived together and
yeah.
how they felt and what the zeitgeist was? Or are you going to ask them when the Republic fell, in which year, and in which year Emperor Constantine founded? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going
It's
to ask?
you
Oh, of
get in.
course.
Yeah, it's very interesting because, like you say, if if we need to teach everything something and we cannot generate the intuitive desire to understand something, then from that standpoint, having standardized, measurable aspects be the foundation, like the way we teach,
Yeah,
makes sense, right? To solve the problem that not everyone will have intuitive understanding
yeah,
or interest. But there is also the kind of uh, other toxic side of it, right? Which is that we force everyone into only measuring and
yes,
caring about the measurements. And so then we all become robots who only know one thing, and
yeah.
it's all, you know, base level, uh, I don't know, facts, memorization, right? It's not real understanding.
I think this is an aspect that we will talk about a lot more during other episodes of the podcast, right? Because I see this
Yeah,
as a really central theme in society that we have such a statistics and measurement obsession,
yeah,
and that we only
yeah,
care about those things that are measurable, and we try to force that upon everyone and everything.
yeah.
And you see it here
It's like
again.
this, yeah, it's like the scientific method on steroids, right?
Yeah,
Where the scientific method makes sense for, you know, measuring nature and aspects like that in order to prove
yeah,
theories about nature, sure.
yeah,
But, you know, now it's essentially if it can't fit into the scientific method, it doesn't exist, is
yeah.
almost the ideology right now.
Like look
And
at
that is not
this.
reality.
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't work when you go to reality. Like in your
Yeah,
theoretical world, you can do everything you want, right? But once you arrive at reality, once you arrive at society or at individual the psychology, you have to let go of your statistics. Like an individual has a story, it evolves, it's conscious, and you cannot just force some abstract measurement upon everyone, which is the same. And the same thing with societal influences, right? If you teach about society, you cannot only look at statistics about happiness or I don't know, and then see, well, the line is going up, therefore if we push this one knob, we tune it a bit, the angle is a bit steeper, therefore we're doing a good job, you know. And you have no intuitive understanding of what's going on. There's only the numbers on the spreadsheet.
Like you suffer from both lack of understanding of people, because humans are complex and consciousness is complex, and also lack of understanding of the full picture, because the world is complex, right? So whatever you pick as your measuring variables, I mean, there will always be a million more variables that are influencing and flowing around in some way, right? That you can't explain with your models, because in your models, they don't exist as forces. But it's a big problem, and we see it in education for sure. These standardized tests, but it's a good argument, right? Can we, how else can we prove that you, I don't know, have learned something, or how else can we prove?
I think it's interesting. I think it's very simple, the solution, and that is to make a clear split between that university is not about these measurements, right? Like the studies below that, you can do these measurement things, but there's this other place where, only the truly motivated who show up, who are always there, always actively discussing, right? We're there, and it's driven by the professor. The professors have individual agency. They can say to a student without reason, like, sorry, you're not fitting in, or like it becomes clear that this person is not paying attention, he is not motivated, and you get a personal system where
And actually another interesting thing about that is that if you think about what qualifies you for getting a PhD or something like that, right? Sure, they argue there is this peer review system now, right? But there are also a bunch of university policies and structures that you need to follow, and it has to fit within a certain framework, et cetera, et cetera. But if there are highly qualified people judging your thinking, your work, right, your rationality, your creativity, if you had a committee that actually does that, you have a system that can qualify you without relying on all these specific measurements, right? You're dependent on humans who are already there almost measuring you as a person, right?
But you have to trust that.
Yeah.
It's about the reduction of top-down totalitarian control by government, no? Like that's kind of what it comes down to here.
It might also just be very difficult at scale, right? I mean, for sure, scale brings complexity. If you think back to the old, the Greek, ancient Greece academias, right, where there were just a few people, right, and they were hyper qualified to judge themselves. But if you had this systemized, thousands of people and professors.
I think the problem is just that, the universities, they've become way too much alike. They're all funded by government money. They all have kind of the same programs. They touch on the same things. They, it doesn't really matter if you go to university A or B, you kind of learn the same things. It's also standardized, and they're reliant on government money. Like there's no real inherent drive to innovate. Like it's way too centralized, I feel. There should be like a university should be like, wow, this university is like has this kind of philosophy on life and on its own students, and
it's going back to equality again, isn't it? We should all be the same, and there's no you can't accept the differences.
It's top-down control of forcing a certain ideology into education.
Uniformity.
And
ideology is a very important thing to not forget.
Sorry?
Ideology is a very important thing not to forget, right? That through education, there is this permanent presence of an ideology. it's most likely your government's ideology, but it could also be from other organizations or forces, right? But in general, it's very important to remember that ideology is there no matter what, no matter how objective you think your education is,
Yeah.
there's an ideology pushing it. And that's just the truth of nature.
Yeah.
And it will always be there. That's fine. That's just reality. I mean, if you create an education system, if you are a government, if you are a society, if you are an organization, you're going to have an ideology, and that's going to be reflected in the education system you put in place.
Yeah.
The important thing, however, is that you should be obviously presenting an accurate
Yeah.
image of that, right?
Yeah.
If I'm teaching people my way, I should be honest about this being my way. And
Yeah.
there are biases here. There is subjectivity here.
And I think what you see nowadays, right, is it's the whole university system. It's become very much this leftist, liberal bubble where it's only allowed to have a perspective that colonization was, the worst thing that has ever happened to the world. You're only allowed to have one view on the world wars. You're only allowed to have, I don't know, like it's all very, this is the way it is. And if you question that, you are not allowed to do research even. If you want to do research into if races are biologically different and what kind of results that has, it's not allowed. You will be banned from university. And that is like the opposite of freedom of university. Which
you will not get funding either, right?
Yeah. You will get funding if you research.
It's kind of crazy. It's like this, it feels like such a blind spot where I think the people in those circles think, like we have freedom, but within the reasonable bounds, something like that.
Yeah,
and then
within
the bound, and then the bounds are actually super strict, but
and
they're
like
blind to
smaller,
see that.
Right? Smaller and smaller.
Yeah, getting smaller.
I think something
getting stricter.
Yeah, and we don't look at the past anymore. Like, we think, Plato, well, he was a white, patriarchal, bad dude who lived in ancient times where people were backwards.
He was great.
So it's not important to think about his thoughts, Nowadays we're so much better. And it even goes further. Like, it's like 100 years ago, the people who thought about things, that doesn't matter anymore. Those people were dumb. Those people were backwards. Right now, we have everything right. I think it's such a...
it's very toxic.
Yeah.
And it's also, I think, to me, it's straight up ridiculous. Because I think if you look at any of the quote unquote greats, of history, they are extremely wise when it comes to especially humanity. Right?
Yeah.
They're wise about how humans work, how our inners work, right? And they can read society. And if you look at some of the theories of old, right, they still apply today. So it's just naive and kind of egotistical to think that some hyper modern, completely new idea with all these random proofs and peer reviews and sources is like better,
About like a person who is only read about like one very specific topic, right? He specializes in one very tiny detail, figures everything out, comes up with a theory, right? And he is very well read on this one thing. But he doesn't know anything about society, about history, about culture. And I think in the past, like the ideal of the Greek philosopher, right? It's someone who is well read in all the aspects of society. A mathematician would also be, someone who specializes in mathematics would also know about society, about history, about all the other important things. And like this is completely lost, I feel, in modern society. This idea that in order to understand one topic, you have to have knowledge about the world, about yourself, about psychology. You have to develop yourself.
I agree. I think this is one of the really, I get that it's difficult in a complex society, right? I get that you do depend on people really specializing a lot, but this educated people should be virtuous, should be knowledgeable about society, right? They should be potentially strong political figures, right?
Yeah.
That because they are well read, they understand the world, they understand complexity, they understand themselves, they understand the people, right? They've thought about these ideas. They should be good thinkers, they should be reasonable, they should be just in general, like, kind of great people in some sense.
And these are the people who can really view farther ahead. I think if you are in one specific niche, you will be an expert on that niche, but you are not able to see like the future of society and maybe say, well, this seems like a good thing from your perspective, right? But if you actually take 3 steps back, you see on the whole for society, this will be detrimental. I also want this freedom or these things, right? It feels for me, I would like that. But if it doesn't work, in like the objective sense, in the sense that society is going to fall apart if you do that, because we have seen that from history. If people did that in the past, we went this way. Therefore, you have to step beyond this like immediate morality, this immediate feeling of I want that because it feels good. In order to be able to step back, you need a broad knowledge, and these are the leaders of society. Or these should be the leaders. Cool.
Yeah, there is this real danger with specialization, especially nowadays, where you are a hyper specialist in one thing, right? No matter how, accurate or inaccurate ideology is, you're a hyper expert, right? You can essentially find something to refute anyone on your topic to a certain degree within the scope of this niche, right? But that doesn't give you any kind of right or any kind of ethos to be someone to listen to on a higher plane of thinking, on a higher scale, right?
Yeah.
You don't have the creds to do that. But I feel like nowadays, especially, internet gives you instant access to people all around the world, right? There are no barriers for you in your hyper niche to share your expertise and think to yourself, well, I have the answer to entire society, and it's in my niche. That's the only thing I've studied. So I'm going to share it with the world. And then, it enters this thing where people see you as an expert, and realistically, you're not an expert at all, actually, when it comes to broader scopes of thinking.
I think to make it more concrete, you can definitely look at COVID as a good example of this. Right, during COVID, you had a lot of the epidemiologist or the vaccine expert. You had a few niche experts that were really experts on their topic, right? And you see the whole government makes their policies only according to them, to their niche. But these people are not vested in history, in economics, in politics, in all these other aspects that also play a part in society. And you cannot just give over your whole autonomy to an expert, right? Who says like, okay, we need to mandate all of these things pop, because then the numbers go down, right? He sees one number on a spreadsheet like go down, not realizing he's destroying society, the fabric of society that society is built upon, the personal interactions that kids need to have in order to grow up and to become a functioning human. He's not taking that into account.
No.
So it's with all these big
it's
topics.
Very naive.
Need people who are read in everything.
For sure. It's like you should be, your decision-making power should be at scale with what you study, right? What you spend your time thinking about, what you prioritize. And so, if you're hyper niche, great for you, make progress in that niche, but don't bring your opinions out into a bigger scale because you have no idea how that fits into the bigger picture. You're too biased, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, I think going back to education, right? And this, ideologies are there, right? We get that subjectivity is there. And now in universities, we have this morality, right? I'd like to touch a bit on that.
Yeah.
Like how morality fits into education, maybe especially nowadays.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think we touched on it a little bit already, right? Where I feel that a lot of university has become about doing the morally good thing, but the morally good thing is kind of decided by society as a whole. Like the whole of society, the media, everything like that influences a concept of what is good. I think nowadays, like some of the biggest topics, right? What is moral? Is it's fighting for feminism, fighting against global climate change, fighting against child pornography online, right? Which we talked last about with privacy. Like there are a couple of these themes that are decided by society, and then the university system is forced to think about the same things. And if you don't think about those things, you will be banned from university. And it's kind of backwards to how it should be, I feel. There should be complete freedom within university. That should go to society and then, or into government, and then government can make decisions based on that instead of forcing university into a certain paradigm.
That's an interesting way to see it, where the university would discover things that we should take into account, and therefore we might change our ideology or morality based on that, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, for sure it's present. I mean, the morality, these ideas of things that are morally good, and therefore we should teach them, right? And they are, I mean, to be straight up, like, to be honest, they are enforced.
Yeah.
You know, what is good, you have no choice in that. This is good and you better like it. And that applies not only at university level, but also in kindergarten, primary school, middle school, high school. At all stages right now, there is, I would say, extremely subjective ideas being taught, and they are taught because they're supposed to be morally good, but they're enforced. You have no choice. The schooling system is uniform across countries, almost, right? And as a parent, you can't do anything about it. If you disagree as a parent, well, too bad. Your kid is going to go through 13 years of indoctrination.
Yes, you have no choice about it, right? And you cannot choose another school or something. I mean, in some countries there is some possibility, but
limited.
Yeah.
And so there is this. I think this is like one of the dangers, right, of the education system, is that it can make you a baseline citizen, but does it make you like a proper human, an individual human? Does it make you does it give you agency, responsibility, independence, right? Or does it too much depend on indoctrinating you into a certain way of thinking?
I think it's kind of like a Reddit mentality, you know, where like I feel like on Reddit it's like there's so many like people who are kind of like morally think something about it. They might have read a few things about that, and then they're just like passing out these really strong opinions, and they feel like they're educated compared to everyone else. And I think a good example of this is like vaccines, right? It's like, I'm not against vaccines. I'm not like some denier who says, it's all bullshit. It's all meant just to poison the people, whatever. But it becomes this entire moral thing to fight against misinformation about vaccines, and anyone who does research into if vaccines could be dangerous, you know, because of course we should like, it's like, no, he's a conspiracy theorist, we should ban him, educate the masses, get everyone vaccinated. It becomes this, what is it, like this ideology about believing in vaccines, and it's the thing for me. And it's like, it's a nuanced topic. We should have discussions about it from both sides, objectively, and that's it. There's not more to it. It's not a moral battle.
No, and I think that also makes you question, right? Because if the government starts pushing back on people questioning things, then it's like, wait, why are you pushing back so hard on it? You know, is there something I shouldn't be questioning here that you're scared of me questioning?
I get more interested in questioning it when that happens. I'm like,
of course.
Fuck, now I want to know. What are you hiding? Like, what is the?
Of course.
But
and then you start to, because the problem then shifts, right? Where you might discover maybe, you know, bad policies or bad actions by the government or someone else, right? And everyone makes mistakes and everyone will make bad actions. That's not the point. But if you're so careful about protecting your power, protecting your perfect reputation as a government in a democratic society, then you got to start asking questions. Like, do you work for the people, or do you work for yourself?
Real
That's
science.
More on the.
Real science should be beyond morality. It shouldn't.
Yeah.
Like, if you look at like the natural sciences, right? Like, or like anything where statistics are involved, where math is involved, you should look at the facts. You should allow researchers to do whatever they want, and it should be separate from the whole political agenda, from companies, from whoever wants that, right? And I feel more and more these two worlds are getting mixed up, where like,
it should be actually objective to the degree possible, right?
And you should not.
But the problem is, like, how can you make it objective if the people are, ideologically subjective? Like, it's baked into them, right? I mean, if you have enough of the population who are too into a certain way of thinking, right?
Like the Redditors, the Reddit scientists.
Yeah, exactly. Or just in general, I think, a lot of people who succeed in school are very good at the things that school measures, right? Like compliance, listening to authority, not asking too many questions, doing your tasks, right? Those are the people who really succeed in academia. And I don't know. I mean, that's an ideology in itself, right? To believe that is what it takes to be a great thinker, an educator, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of ridiculous.
Like for the people who, like, the whole system of education filters for the people who can, like, what does it really filter for? I think nowadays it filters like, can you listen to what is being said? Are you obedient? Are you gonna follow the rules? Like, are you gonna be punctual when you have to be here at this time? You have to do this test at this moment. Now you have to study this list of words. Now you have to do this. Now you have to do this. Like, I feel like if you're obedient and kind of smart, you will do amazingly. And if you are extremely smart but not at all obedient, you will be kicked out of the system. You will not.
I was just gonna say this, that probably the current system filters out the most capable people of being in research, in academia,
to some amount, because for sure. It filters out a big chunk of them.
Yeah, because a lot of the rule breakers, a lot of the creatives, right, that don't want to just follow they want to keep the curious, right? They keep asking questions. They want new answers. They want to question an existing theory, right? These people will be denied at every step of the way in their journey of education because it's wrong. No, don't ask questions. It's this way. Learn this and study this and you'll pass the exam.
Also because your teacher is probably not an expert either, right? And I think there's something else, because the teacher doesn't want to be questioned on what he's doing, right? The teacher, he feels maybe like, oh, I don't know about that. Just listen, do this. I was taught this,
Sure.
I think there's also some aspect of that in high school. I think this is definitely the case. In university, maybe not so much. But in high school, if you are smarter than your teacher, like, your teacher would just say, no, do that.
And this is just, this is another part of, like, complexity of society, right? It's the fact that we do need a lot of teachers, and there will be very intelligent people all over the place who encounter a bunch of teachers that are not nearly as intelligent as them. That's reality. But I think that also comes down to what are the teachers being taught in teaching school, right? In their studies.
I think to relate to this, right, like if you look at two as like obedience and intelligence as two separate variables, right? They're just randomly distributed. You have some people who are very intelligent and obedient, and you have the opposite, and you have a mix of both, right? And I think, this obedience is also linked a lot to ADHD, because I feel nowadays everyone is diagnosed with ADHD in schools. Everyone who cannot follow this exact strict system, who is a bit less obedient, they have ADHD. They should take medication. They should, inhibit those things. And it's, for me, I feel those are the people, they should be taught differently. For them, education, as we know it, just doesn't work, right? They're not meant for this kind of strict rule-based system.
No.
Doesn't mean that they're less smart or that they Like they might be the best professors. They might come up with the truly creative ideas within the next generation. But in our current schooling system, these people are thrown out. They are like, no, doesn't fit. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think we have this in general as a problem that we have one path of the education system. I mean, if we think about the main, from primary school to university, there's, or at least to high school, right? There's essentially one path, and
I mean,
it is rigid. It is filled with conformity.
Yeah, I think this depends a bit on the country, no?
Because there is a split maybe in high school.
Yeah, in high school, for example, in the Netherlands, there is already a split in high school between 3 different levels of education, and everyone at age 12 goes into a different branch.
There is a split, and I think that's in most countries probably. Because if you want to be an electrician, you're not doing the same high school as people who go to university, I think in most countries.
Yeah, exactly.
But either way, I mean, okay, fine, but at what age does that start? And also within the people who do only study, right? How much variation is there really? I mean, you have to conform to the tests. You have to sit quietly and do your thing all day, every day.
Yeah, this is all the same. Yeah.
It's all the same. And I think it's important to look at the things that it kills in humans, right? I mean, I'm not I'm not some kind of innovative genius when I say that it probably kills creativity quite hard,
Really?
Yeah, I know. And crazy new idea here that maybe when you send all these children into a classroom to sit like this, strict for 13 years, they're going to be less creative and less curious about the world, right?
Yeah.
Because learning has become this kind of toxic thing almost.
I can tell for myself, like, it killed, like, my interest in reading. I didn't want to learn languages. I found language class extremely boring. I was not interested in history. I didn't care in high school. I found it boring. And, like, now it's like all of these things, I find them so interesting because I can do it on my own time. I can research whatever I want about. If I'm like really interested in one niche area, I will go and research everything about that. And then, and I feel like you could go into this in the classrooms. Imagine like a high school where people are like all kind of in their own topics, and then they give like presentations about it to the class. They're like, well, I really researched this. Let's talk about this. Let's have a discussion about this. I want to share this. I can imagine an educational system more similar to this, instead of all these standardized tests, right?
It's crazy. I also, with language class, like it was so boring when I grew up, and I'm pretty sure that I could have spoken 4 languages by the time I was in 5th grade if the system just reorganized a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure that's possible.
I know it. I'm learning languages so quick now, but in the past, I was so bad at it in high school. Why?
Yeah, but as a child, you would probably pick it up even more easily, right? So
100%.
Yeah. So I think, in general, education systems are filtering out. Like they're making us into certain types of people. Right?
Yeah.
And I think we should ask the question of, is it making us into the type of people we want to be?
Yeah. I think the key thing here is that the system itself has like the way the system works guides what kind of people come out of it, right? Fundamentally, how you design such a system, what is really taught like implicitly between the lines, you have the things that are taught, and then you have the way people are taught, like the things they do on a daily basis, like the same schedule, lunch 12:30 every single day, every day. Like that's like it's kind of crazy, that this is also strict, and it makes sense from some perspective because standardization, efficiency, right? It's like factories, but it becomes like a people factory, which
it is a people factory. It's like the bell goes, you do this. The bell goes, you do this. The bell goes, you do this. We
all line up, and then we have 5 minutes to get to the next class, and everyone goes.
You move the same patterns, right, between the classrooms and the
next year,
lockers, and
boom, same schedule, same teachers teaching teaching exactly the same things. all brought down from you by big government.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if we really want to reimagine what society can be, and I think in general we're already talking about some of our ideas, right? And we will keep talking about these kinds of things throughout our podcast, like things that how society could really be different, try to make us understand how rigid our view of the world is and how limited it is with regards to what could be.
Yeah.
And I think education is one of those areas you have to start. You have to start early. People are indoctrinated through school. That is not a question. Whether it's good or bad, you can argue for. But it's not a question that this rigid worldview that we have is built up throughout our years in education. And so I think we should think about how to change it for the better.
And thinking big, it's we are allowed to think like, we don't, it's not like, well, maybe we send 2% more money to education next year and pay the teachers 3% more, because those are the kinds of discussions that politics is having. I would like to think bigger, right? More fundamental. What should we change? What would I like to see the educational system as, right? And I think in this we can also learn a lot from the past, right? How did the university start? Where did the greatest minds of the past, which university did they come from? What kind of systems were in place there?
I think really rethinking, I mean, you have all these hours at your disposal, right? To teach a child, like to educate a child. How can we rewire those hours, right? Look at society, look at, okay, what do we need? What are key things you need? Okay. What are the real baselines that you need? And how can we make it a different system that develops different characteristics, right? A more open system, not this prisoner factory system that we have right now. And I think, to be honest, if governments would allow for it, I could set up a school and, it could be voluntary whether parents wanted to send their children there, right? I mean, if it's voluntary, it's not going to cause a great issue because the parent chose it. They have the right to choose it. And then over time, you can see the effect of the children who went to that school versus the children who went to other schools. And to be honest, you could set up 3-4 parallel testing schools, around a city, or a city would probably be best because then the environment is kind of similar.
Another way what one could do is you could say, well, the schools, they don't get money directly from government, but what instead you do is you say as government, like, well, we're going to give subsidies to individual people, right? If you have a child, you get like a budget, an education budget, and then you can decide yourself to which private schools you send your kid, right? And there the university got money in this way.
Yeah, but that depends on the schools again, right? And I think, the thing that we talk about here,
you have competition, right? You don't have this top-down approach anymore.
True. But I think still, as far as I'm aware, private schools are quite restricted in how much they can stray from common curriculum.
I mean, nowadays, yes, but I would also like to see that change to be way more open.
Exactly. You still need to open the top level policies that are in place for education, right? You need to open them up to more possibilities.
I think you can have some fundamental aspects where it's like, well, you should have some aspects on history. You should teach people some aspects on this. You should teach them about how our government works, which I think is also very important, but way more broad, and maybe way more with personal inspectors that go by and that look, are you guys sort of teaching these things? Instead of like standardized measurements where people have to do exactly the same tests.
Really, like, because I guess that's one of the problems of privatizing schools is that it's hard to make money, right? Because parents, then only rich parents will be able to send their children there, and still it's a heavy investment. So if there's some kind of budget towards it, that would kind of work. That's an interesting path to pick.
Those are governmental questions, right? Societal questions. And I think, like, for me, I've thought about this, but I have not gone all the way in depth about like what would be the best way to financially make sure money goes this way. I think if you really like get a group of people together, you think about this for a long time, you'll be able to come up with really good systems here. I think these are just some ideas that I've had about like, would be possible like that, you know, give the individual more agency in choosing where money goes, right? Like it's your money.
Yeah.
You choose to spend it on your kid's education in this direction because you think it's the best thing for your kid.
Yeah, that could work. That could work. You're still dependent on government approval, right? So you still need to open up the door for different systems to be approved by the government.
I guess so. Yeah.
And yeah.
Is there anything else you want to touch on? I think for me we touched on all the aspects. I think
yeah, I also think so. I think we kept it quite like high level, I would say, you know, more about education as a concept, as a very big concept, and it is. And I think you can easily talk for the same amount of time about the specifics, right? Like building on the last thing we said about, okay, how do you actually implement this kind of system, right?
Yeah.
And then you can start touching on, okay, what's the issue with math? What's the issue with history? What's the issue with languages? What's the issue with the way classes are structured and the way teachers interact with children, right? And you can touch on all the specifics, and you can and you can implement this kind of quote unquote ideology that we've been sharing here, right? These kind of principles that we've been talking about. But I think the message is clear, right? There are better principles that should be present in education, and there are things to be aware of with regards to how education works right now and how the systems are in place. And it's something to be aware of, something to keep in mind. And I think if you're a younger person listening to this, then keep this in mind when you have children of your own, right?
And research yourself broadly, you know, look into all the different aspects and into the classical things, you know, look into history, look into some of the abstract sciences and the theoretical sciences. There are so many different aspects that all fit together into a big holistic picture of humanity. And you don't get this in school. They don't teach you.
No,
you have to do it for yourself.
And, you have to do it for yourself, and you should probably be the one doing it for your own children in the future as well.
Yeah.
Unless there are great systems in place by that time, but we will see.
Yeah, maybe. Actually, there's one thing that people could do.
What is that?
Akarm.com.
Ah, yes.
You can educate yourself there.
Exactly,
you know?
exactly.
And,
right there, and educate yourself with others there.
Yeah.
It's probably the best solution, to be honest.
I think so. I mean, I don't know any similar platform that organizes knowledge in the same way, you know. I think it's
And you can trust us on the fact that the future plans are also aligned with the same kind of principles and ideas we're talking about here today.
Everything that we're talking about. And this is the fundamental reason why we build Akarm, right? To get the same kinds of discussions that we are having here on Akarm, and to create a platform for healthy, good discussions on a higher level, where it's not the immediate morality, but actually openness and longer form thoughts, good in-depth discussion.
Yeah, bringing knowledge to humans, to humanity in a different way, right? In a way that we feel is not present right now, and it aligns very much with what we talked about in this episode, right? How to become educated, how to become an educated person.
Oh.
So yeah, check it out, akarm.com.